If there's something strange in your backpack, it probably counts kills. If there's something weird and it don't look good, well, that's just manpower. I am afraid of this ghost. It took me like 2 hours to come up with an intro for this video, and that was all I got. So, it can only be uphill from here, right? We're back with bug busters, cause busted makes me feel good, okay? This time we're covering heavy bugs. The heaviest bug in the world is the Goliath beetle, which can weigh up to 100 grams. And now that we've got that out of the way, let's look at some TF2 heavy bugs. Our first bug says that depleting all the ammo of any minigun by lightly tapping the primary fire while keeping it spun up with a secondary fire allows the heavy to appear to continue firing indefinitely despite having no ammunition. Sounds will play and the muzzle flash is visible, but no damage can be dealt. And yeah, if you're at 1 ammo and just tap the fire button once, the minigun will appear to continue firing despite having no ammo and not being able to deal any damage of any kind. And this bug actually probably goes back to when the game came out, but I found a video demonstrating it from 2009. And no, Arlene Tousley from 5 years ago, this bug has not been fixed. There's no real practical use to this bug, but I guess it can be used for psychological warfare. Fool your enemies into thinking you're attacking them when you're actually not. But they'll usually just think you're attacking them. A heavy with any melee weapon as his active weapon can continue to attack while stunned, albeit with invisible animations. As soon as I saw this, I knew almost for a fact that this has been fixed because I was pretty positive it was even listed in the patch notes of an update. And I looked through like 2 years worth of updates and found it was actually fixed on March 28th, 2018. And yeah, if you try it in game, it doesn't work. It also doesn't work if you're stunned by the supernova in manpower either. But if you're wondering what it used to look like, I actually showed this bug in an old facts video once, though by this point it has been fixed quite a while. If a heavy spins up his primary and taunts while keeping the secondary fire held down, the barrel will not spin after the taunt is finished. This can be fixed by firing or unrevving. And just like the description says, if you're holding down the secondary fire button when you taunt, after you come out of the taunt, the barrel of the minigun won't spin. This also applies to the Natasha and the Brass Beast as well. Depleting the ammo of any minigun while simultaneously picking up another minigun makes the heavy unable to attack or deal damage. It will also cause the heavy's animations to stop completely. Everyone knows this one at this point. You go into any 2-fort server and you see at least one heavy doing it. If you pick up another minigun right as your minigun runs out of ammo, you'll go into an A pose. And you can fix this just by changing weapons. But you can also use this for psychological warfare. Well, you could try. And I actually found out that something similar happens if you pick up an all-class melee as heavy while you're no-clipped. This only happens if you have no clip on, so it's really not that big of a deal, and it can be fixed the same way by just changing weapons. I also found that if a heavy switches weapons from an all-class melee weapon to gloves, his hands will briefly turn invisible. And I don't think that's currently listed anywhere. But yeah, the A-pose bug, that one's obviously true. Despite the previous category including a bunch of minigun related bugs, this next section is going to include bugs featured on the minigun page specifically. And the first one says that when holding the primary fire button during a taunt, the minigun's muzzle flash turns invisible. And yeah, if you're holding down your fire button when you activate a taunt, when you come out of that taunt, the minigun won't have any kind of muzzle flash when you're firing. This one actually applies to and is listed for every single one of Heavy's primary weapons, and seems to work with any type of taunt. But this bug is also only from your perspective. From the perspective of other players, the muzzle flash works fine. This bug is also seemingly only fixable by changing classes. Switching weapons and even dying won't cause the flash to come back. It's not like this affects gameplay in any way, but it is slightly annoying. When CL first person uses world model is set to 1, attempting to switch to another weapon slot immediately after unrevving the gun causes the minigun model to be replaced by the weapon that was being switched to. I believe this mode was made for VR, but you could use it anytime you want to, if you feel like it. So it's kind of like rather than using the normal first person animations, your camera is basically set on your third person model. So if you look down, you can actually see your character's body. It's kinda neat. And if you're in this mode and you try to change weapons while the minigun is in the process of unrevving after being spun up, you'll briefly see the weapon, in this case the shotgun, and then it'll disappear, leaving you with an invisible minigun. This is another bug that works with every minigun, but unlike what the description says, it seems to only show the weapon very briefly before it disappears. Every time I tried this, I was left with an invisible minigun rather than the other weapon. For the Natasha and the Brass Beast, the attribute minus 20% damage resistance when below 50% health and spun up is incorrect. The resistance applies if the heavy takes enough damage to go below 50% health. I've actually talked about this one before, and I think at this point it's pretty well known. You would think the way the stat is listed that the resistance would only kick in if you were below 150 health. But as you can see, this full health heavy takes 100 damage from the grenade and is brought down to 200 health, which is not below half, but the next grenade is still resisted and does 80 damage. Any hit from any amount of health that would hypothetically bring the heavy below half health will be resisted by 20% if the heavy is spun up with the brass beast or the Natasha. It kinda seems like this is purposely done this way, but it's not listed that way in the stats. Yeah, the Meet Your Match nerf kind of ruined this stat and just made it way more complicated than it ever needed to be. But the weirdness with that stat continues. The extra damage provided by a critical hit will not be resisted, only the base hit will be. A crit grenade normally deals 100 explosive damage and 200 critical damage for a total of 300. But against the Natasha or Brass Beast Heavy that's spun up, only that explosive damage is resisted, bringing that damage down to 280 rather than 240. When empty, the Natasha's dry fire sound does not loop properly and cuts off after a few seconds. If you're in a situation where you run out of ammo with a Natasha and attempt to continue firing for too long afterwards without picking up ammo, the sound effect will just decide to end. Diagonal movement bypasses the Natasha's 40% movement reduction, causing its applied slowdown to do very little, making the 100% chance to slow target attribute inaccurate. This one is interesting for a couple of reasons. First off, it claims the Natasha's slowdown is 40%, which I've actually never heard before. Presumably, this means the Natasha's maximum slowdown since the effect is lessened with distance. But on the slowdown page of the wiki, it says the Natasha slows enemies to approximately 113 hammer units a second, and that differences in class's normal running speed do not change that figure. If it was a general 40% reduction, then how fast the class normally runs would affect this. For example, if Scout was slowed down by 40%, he'd go from his normal speed of 133% to 79.8%. But 113 hammer units a second is 37.7%, so there's a pretty big difference there. And if you look at what it shows in game, it's just kind of all over the place. But I guess all this was ultimately not really important to what the bug was saying. Can the slowdown be partially bypassed by moving diagonal? Well, let's find out. So first off, as just a neutral thing, we'll just run forward. So if I run at this Natasha heavy while only pressing the W key, I'm actually unable to get past him at a certain point due to the slowdown combined with the gun's knockback. But if I hold both W and A when I run at the Natasha heavy, I was able to get by him. The same thing can happen if you tap both A and D as you run forward. If you remember from the Scout bug video, that same technique could be used to get past the Bonk's post-use slowdown. And it seems to work the same here too. During deployment, the sound of the Brass Beast will pause for a second before resuming at a louder volume. Now this means deployment as in spinning up and not taking out. But yeah, when you spin up, there's a super brief pause in the sound. To me, it doesn't really seem like it gets louder after the pause, but the pause is definitely there. While firing, the bullets from the Brass Beast seem to originate from the right of the weapon in client view. I don't think they do. I've never noticed that. Unless I'm missing something, the bullets seem to come out right where they're supposed to. And then, much later in editing, I noticed that I was missing something, so here I am recording this later. I used our previous trick to get rid of the muzzle flash, and without it, it becomes a lot more obvious that the bullets are coming out ever so slightly to the right. But with the flash, it's mostly hidden. It can appear as if the gun is firing in a different direction to where it actually is. This can be encountered when a heavy is shooting below him while on a ledge. This is true, but it's also in no way at all exclusive to the Brass Beast. But let's just see how it looks on the Brass Beast to start with. He's on the ledge and he's aiming downward, and while the bullets go downward, the minigun itself and the muzzle flash are both pointed forward. And this can happen with any heavy primary if you're aiming too far down while on a ledge. And to my knowledge, this can happen with quite possibly every weapon in the game. Here it is with a shotgun, where the bullets go downward while the shotgun's pointing more forward. Here it is with the rocket launcher, flamethrower, stickies. At a certain point, if you're looking too far downward while on a ledge, the character's animations won't quite match up with where the bullets or projectiles are going. But you do have to be looking pretty far downward, to the point where situations like this are rarely going to naturally come up. Either way, while this one is true, it's also definitely not at all a Brass Beast bug. Due to a separate bug with every other minigun increasing their attack interval by 0.005, the fire's 20% slower attribute of the Tomislav is inaccurate. It currently fires 15% slower relative to stock. Interestingly, the minigun bug that this one is talking about isn't actually listed on the minigun's page. But this video right here actually explains the whole thing, and I'll link to that in the description. I would definitely recommend watching that if you're interested in this at all. But basically, for the longest time, it was generally thought that the minigun fired every 0.1 seconds, and while it's kinda supposed to, it's actually 0.105 seconds. And I guess that's because the game checks time at a rate of 0.015 seconds per tick, and because the minigun's attack interval isn't a multiple of 0.015, it gets rounded up from 0.1 to 0.105. I probably ruined that explanation a bit, but the main takeaway from this is that the minigun fires slightly slower than intended. However, the Tomislav's attack interval of 0.12 is a multiple of 0.015, so it's actually not affected. Basically, the Tomislav works fine, and it's the minigun that has this problem, but that does technically affect how the Tomislav stats are portrayed. Again, this video explains the whole thing, and I would definitely recommend you go watch that. The genuine variant of the Hulong Heater's view model is not affected by the Use Minimized View Models option. Here's a genuine Hulong Heater, here it is with a normal view model, and here it is with minimized view models. It looks minimized to me. I spent 34 cents for this genuine Hulong Heater just for this video, and this bug isn't even true. You see the things I do for you people? The fire ring can damage enemies while underwater. Even though it seems like maybe it shouldn't, the fire ring still works perfectly fine when you're underwater. It won't cause afterburn, but it will still damage enemies on hit. The ring can have an afterburn effect on a pyro if the pyro has been injured by another Hulong Heater. If another heavy hits that pyro with the fire ring, and then I hit the pyro with my fire ring, nothing seems to happen. The pyro is damaged, but again, there's no afterburn. The same thing happens if two heavies are both hitting the pyro with the fire ring at the same time. The pyro is damaged, but there's no afterburn. The fire ring's damage is increased from 12 to 15, but that's because the heater deals 25% more damage to burning players. The pyro is burning from touching the fire ring, but still not taking any afterburn. For Heavy's secondaries, if the sandwich is the active weapon during humiliation, it can still be thrown using the alt fire, and taunting will still restore the player to full health. This is true, and it does work for every food item, but this does seem like a bit of a stretch for a bug. Maybe being able to throw it with the alt fire counts, but taunting is always allowed after the round ends, and if the taunt heals you, I guess that's fine. You can actually activate bonk and the critical in the exact same way after the round ends, but that's currently not listed as a bug for those weapons. So yeah, this one is true, but it's also super minor. When a player consumes a sandwich with the Franken Heavy set equipped, the sandwich's eating time is reduced to 3 seconds. However, the healing rate does not change, so the Heavy only heals up to 225 health. The Franken Heavy item set has a unique taunt when all the items are used together, but this taunt would still actually play if you tried to eat the sandwich instead of the sandwich's normal eating animation, resulting in you being healed, but not all the way due to the shorter taunt time. This definitely used to be true, and you can still find footage of it, but it was fixed at some point, and now we just have the boring old sandwich eating animation. If the player is damaged while doing an action taunt at either full health or overheal, and the sandwich is the active weapon, then the sandwich will disappear as if used, although with no effect on the player. This doesn't seem to work with full health, and it doesn't seem to work with overheal either, so no. If the player is regenerating health, the gloves are running urgently, or the eviction notice, the sandwich may be consumed despite not being able to heal the player. This does say may be consumed as if it doesn't always happen, but I wasn't able to get it to happen at all. And actually at the time of recording this bug has already been removed from the wiki, so I guess other people couldn't get it to work either. The festive variant of the sandwich does not glow when crit boosted. No, it does not. The festive variant does not appear when inspecting it from the backpack menu. No, it does not. The light on the festive sandwich may appear red or blue when thrown instead of the typical yellow. I'm not entirely sure if that thing is supposed to be a light or not, but the thingy on top of the festive sandwich is whitish yellow when you're holding it, but if you throw it, it becomes red on red team or blue on blue team. Due to an October 23rd, 2017 patch fixing an exploit with the gloves running urgently, the Dalico's bar will not overheal the heavy if they're at full health. So from the gunmetal update in 2015 until that patch in 2017, the Dalico's bar would give some overheal in addition to the 50 max health increase. It would overheal to a max of 400, but this was never really an explicit stat on the Dalico's bar's description. So yeah, that patch unfortunately nerfed the Dalico's bar to fix a different bug. The overheal did decay pretty quickly, and wasn't even especially helpful, but the Dalico's bar has also never been particularly good, and it's been even worse since that overheal was removed. Due to the December 22nd, 2010 patch, fixing the movement speed stacking with the gloves running urgently, the speed increase from the Buffalo Stake overrides the speed increase from the disciplinary action in the Conqueror. As a result, a heavy with just a speed boost will actually move faster than a heavy who's eaten the steak and also gotten a speed boost. And there's a few things to note here. When the Buffalo Stake came out, it made you move 35% faster while under its effects, and that fully stacked with the gloves of running urgently's 30% faster move speed. This was restricted in that patch, so that while under the stake's effects, you can't move more than 35% faster. And a speed boost from something like the disciplinary action boosts heavy speed by 40%. So while the gloves of running urgently and a speed boost can still stack, the speed boost can't stack with the stake. Or at least it used to not be able to. At some point, probably during Jungle Inferno, the speed increase on the stake was stealth nerfed from plus 35% to plus 30%. However, the speed cap on the stake is still set to plus 35%. So while the stake now only boosts your speed to 299 hammer units a second, if that's combined with any other form of speed increase, like a speed boost, the gloves are running urgently, or the eviction notice, it can still stack up to 310.5 hammer units a second, which is plus 35%. So basically all you need to know is that if you eat the steak, your speed is capped at plus 35%. The extra damage provided by a critical hit or a mini crit is not impacted by the damage vulnerability. And hey, this one was possibly discovered by yours truly. I mean, I was the one who put it on the wiki, so I say that counts. And if you watch the min and max damage videos, you probably already know that this is true. If you hit a heavy under the effects of the Buffalo Stake with a crit or a mini crit, the stake's vulnerability is completely ignored. The crit grenade only deals 300, and the mini crit grenade only deals 135. The second banana's attribute, plus 50% increase in charge recharge rate, is incorrect. It actually charges in 10 seconds, which is 66% faster than the sandwich's recharge time. And it does in fact charge in 10 seconds compared to the sandwich's 30 seconds. So yeah. The second banana's jiggle bones are inverted. If you look up really fast, the banana's peel will go up with you rather than down, and if you run forward, the banana's peel moves forward rather than back. It's kind of amusing to look at, but that's not how banana peels work. For melee weapons, switching between the gloves of running urgently or the eviction notice and other weapons rapidly will cause the max health to go below 100. When those weapons are drawn, they will instantly lower your health by 20 before the normal health drain starts. It normally won't drain below 100, but if you keep switching back and forth, you can get it to go under. But when it regenerates, it does go back to the proper health, so it's really not that big of a deal. The weapon attribute, when weapon is active, is missing. This is true, and it's actually also missing from the eviction notice, but that's actually currently not listed on the eviction notices page. Due to rounding, occasionally the heavy will receive 1 health point more when regenerating health if previously damaged. As you can see, I start with 299 health, but when it regenerates, it goes back to 300. But it can actually also work the other way. This time I started with 123 health, but when it regenerated, I only had 122. With the bread bite at higher fields of view, the Heavy's arms can be seen, although they are completely invisible and unmodeled, unlike those of Heavy's other fist-based weapons. Yeah, after Meet Your Match, they actually extended the view models of almost every weapon in the game, but they seem to have forgotten about a few of them. I can think of one other offhand, but it's actually for a class we haven't gotten to yet, so we'll see that in a future video. So here's the bread bite's arms compared to how they would look with the gloves of running urgently, and yeah, they're definitely cut off. The player can see part of shrinking right hand when the bread monster's mouth is opened. Kind of weird wording, but yes you can. When the Heavy is wearing glove items, his hands are changed into these weird, deformed, squished versions, presumably so they don't clip too much with the gloves. But on some items you can still see the squished hand poking through. It happens when the bread monster opens his mouth, then you can also see a bit of it on the holiday punch as well. If the player has not drawn the Fists of Steel when respawning or changing classes to Heavy, they will not have the overheal penalty until the Fists of Steel are drawn. The health from healers and maximum overheal penalty are kind of awkwardly worded when it comes to the Fists of Steel's other stats. There is no general when weapon is active stat on the Fists of Steel, but the resistance and vulnerability are both individually listed as when active. And because it's not listed for them, this might lead you to believe the health penalties are supposed to be passive. But they are kind of only when active, and the balanced blog post that introduced these changes also states they're only when active. The problem with the stat is that if you're already actively being healed and then switch to the Fists of Steel, the overheal penalty won't apply until the medic stops and starts healing you again. The exact same thing happens in Manpower with the power-up's no overheal penalty. If they were being healed when they picked up the power-up, the penalty won't apply until the medic stops healing them. Basically, aside from these penalties actually kind of being beneficial to the Fists of Steel in some ways, they're also easily bypassable when you don't want them. So yeah, I don't think this nerf really worked as intended. The Holiday Punch does not glow when crit boosted. It does not. The Strange variant counts tickles as times the player has hit an enemy with a crit. Therefore, even if the enemy is already laughing or taunting, the counter will still rise. This also means that other heavies wearing this item that are forced to laugh by a normal punch will not increase the counter. My Strange Holiday Punch starts with 124 tickle fights 1, but when I punch this already taunting heavy from behind, it still counts. And it does not count if you hit another Holiday Punch heavy from the front if it wasn't a crit. During a truce, it's still possible to force enemies to laugh. Not only does this not work anymore, but it was fixed over 5 years ago, and it's even listed in the update history on the Holiday Punches page. The Holiday Punch doesn't appear when inspecting it from the backpack menu. And you guessed it, it does not. And finally, we have one heavy achievement bug that says that the Supreme Soviet achievement can be earned through any invulnerability effects and not just Ubercharge. Examples given are Spawn Invulnerability, Crit Boost from the Killing Gloves of Boxing or Capping and Capture the Flag, and Escaping the Underworld on Ioduct. And I actually recorded this part from my alt account on my laptop, so that is why it looks different. But if you're playing a game mode like Manpower, where you start Ubered and spawn, every single time you spawn, it'll count towards this achievement. But aside from that, the crit boost from the KGB seems to have no effect on it, nor does the crit boost from capturing the flag. And interestingly, even though you enter and exit the underworld of Viaduct in an Ubered state, neither of them count towards the achievement. So I guess that means it's just spawn Ubers then. If you want to get it quickly, all you gotta do is just die over and over in Manpower. That shouldn't be too hard. Okay, that was another Bug Busters. And geez, every single one of these ends up being way longer than I expect. I originally wanted to do Engineer this time, but I put that off just because there was so much there. I thought Heavy would be easier, but even this ended up being pretty long. So that means, for the main part of the series, all we have left is Pyro, Engineer, and Sniper. So which of those three do you want to see next? My vote is for Sniper, because I know Engineer and Pyro are going to be like 30 minutes long. So don't make me do that. But yeah, that's all I got for this one, so thanks for watching, and special thanks to my patrons like Varric, Captain Forex, Eggox, Dex, Probably Vinegar, Caponicus, Kelso the Pirate, Pillsman's Fox, Kyber96, Scout with a Name, Glump, Salt God, Lavi, Taupe, Time Consuming, Steel Frog, Mud, and Firefox. Okay, alright. Peace out, dogs.